They called it a celebration of legacy. A grand send-off for a man who had given everything to his family and his career. That man was Gregory Monroe, my father. And today, he was retiring after 35 years as a high-ranking VP at a multinational construction firm. There was champagne, crystal chandeliers, live jazz, gourmet hors d'oeuvres passed around on silver trays. Everything felt polished, curated, expensive, and fake. I hadn't planned to come. Honestly, I deleted the first invite when it showed up in my inbox, thinking it was some PR stunt from Tamara, my ever-calculating stepmother. But then my Aunt Myra called. "Just stop by for a little while, Delilah," she said gently. "You don't have to stay. Just show them you're still standing." That part stuck with me, still standing. Because Lord knows, they spent years trying to convince the world I was the one who fell behind. I walked into the event hall alone. Dressed sharply, navy silk blouse, black slacks, heels that clicked with each step. My hair was pulled back, clean and elegant. I looked composed. More composed than I felt. The room was full already. A sea of expensive dresses and sleek suits. Laughter, clinking glasses, people hugging with that practiced kind of warmth you only see at charity galas and family events held out of obligation. No one noticed me at first. Until I reached the welcome table. It was draped in white linen, with a small, tasteful sign that read "Find your badge, we're all family tonight." Name tags were neatly arranged in alphabetical order. I scanned the rows: Caleb Monroe, Sienna Monroe, Aunt Myra. Then I saw mine. At first I blinked, thinking maybe I'd read it wrong. Delilah Monroe. The regret. The words were printed in a thinner font beneath my name, almost like a job title. But it wasn't. It was deliberate. It was cruel. And it was Tamara. I felt my pulse spike in my ears. There was a moment of frozen silence in my own mind, a kind of stillness where all the noise around me faded. I stared at the badge, unsure whether to laugh or scream. My fingers hovered above it but didn't touch. From across the room, I heard it. That laugh. Soft, familiar, acidic. Tamara stood near the bar in a floor-length burgundy dress, swirling a glass of rose like she was starring in a wine commercial. Her eyes met mine. She raised her eyebrows slightly and gave me that smile. The one that didn't reach her eyes. The one that said, "What are you going to do about it, sweetie?" A few people had turned to look now. They didn't know what was happening, but they could feel it. That quiet tension, like the air before a storm. No one said a word, but I could feel the judgment in their glances, their half-curious, half-condescending expressions. "Don't make a scene," their silence said. And for a moment, I almost didn't. For a moment, I almost swallowed it. Like I had 1,000 times before. But then I remembered the last time I saw my father. The way he said, "You always find a way to make things about yourself," when I tried to tell him I'd bought my third property. The way he barely looked at me while Tamara went on about Caleb's entrepreneurial spirit. Even though his last business venture had been funded entirely by Gregory, and quietly shut down when it failed. I looked at the name tag again. The regret. And for once, I didn't flinch. I picked it up, smoothed it flat, and laid it back on the table, perfectly aligned with the others. Then I smiled. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I picked up a glass of champagne from a passing tray, turned toward the crowd, and let the glass clink gently against my nail, just loud enough to draw attention. If Tamara wanted a performance, I was going to give her the show of her life. I wasn't always the regret. There was a time when my father looked at me like I was his whole world. When he used to sneak extra marshmallows into my hot chocolate and let me fall asleep on his lap during late-night baseball games. Back when he was just Dad, not Gregory Monroe. The future husband of a woman who would rewrite everything I thought I knew about family. I was 10 when my parents divorced. There wasn't a dramatic blowout. No shouting, no broken plates. Just hushed arguments behind closed doors, and suddenly, one week I had 2 bedrooms and a duffel bag with my name on it. My mother and I moved into a small rental outside San Antonio. My dad stayed in the house we'd grown up in and moved on fast. 6 months later, I was shaking hands with Tamara. She was all smiles and pearls and rehearsed warmth. "I just know we're going to be the best of friends, Delilah," she said, pressing her lip-glossed mouth to my cheek. I remember how tight she squeezed my shoulder when she said it. How she gripped instead of held. Tamara had 2 kids, Caleb, 2 years older than me, and Sienna, 2 years younger. They were attractive in that curated kind of way. Like they'd been raised to look good in Christmas cards. And Tamara? She made sure every card had them dead center. I was in exactly one. The first year, I tried. God help me, I really did. I showed up to awkward dinners, sat through her weird affirmations about blending our blessings, smiled when people asked me if it was fun to have a new mom. But then the small things started piling up. Caleb's science project? Framed in the living room. Mine? Oh, honey, it just didn't match the aesthetic. Sienna's birthday? Ice cream cake. Glitter balloons, private trampoline park. Mine? A forgotten text from my dad, happy birthday, kiddo. Hope it's a good one. By 13, I was a live-in babysitter. Tamara said it was character building. Caleb and Sienna never lifted a finger. When I asked Gregory why, he sighed like I'd asked something exhausting. You're older. Be mature. No one was mature enough, apparently, to stop Tamara from draining my college fund. It was my mother's savings. She'd worked 2 jobs for years to build it up. My father had access to the account for tuition purposes. Instead, he invested it into Caleb's startup. A drone delivery company. The kind that sounded cool on paper but had no real plan. No market strategy, and no actual drones. My mom took them to court. The legal fees nearly bled her dry. I didn't speak to my father for almost a year after that. When I graduated high school, I walked the stage alone. He sent flowers, generic white lilies, and a note signed with his secretary's handwriting. I knew because it spelled my name wrong, Delia. So I left. I took out loans. Applied for every grant I could find, and enrolled in community college. I studied business, then got my real estate license. I flipped my first property at 24, then another at 25. By 30, I was pulling in 6 figures a year managing my own portfolio. And still, every family event I showed up to, I was Delilah, the one who just won't let go of old things. They made me feel like my success didn't matter unless it fit their narrative. If it didn't come from Gregory's connections or Tamara's fundraisers, it wasn't real. I wasn't real. But I kept showing up. I showed up for weddings, baby showers, charity luncheons, trying to prove I belonged. That I wasn't bitter. That I was still part of him. But the truth is, they never wanted me to succeed. They wanted me quiet. They wanted the regret to stay in the corner. And for too many years, I did. Until today. Today was different. Because I wasn't that girl anymore, the one who begged for recognition, who laughed at the insults just to keep the peace. No. Today, I picked up a champagne glass and clinked it with a smile. And Tamara didn't even realize. Her game was finally over. If there was one thing Tamara Monroe loved more than attention, it was staging perfection. The ballroom shimmered under warm amber lights. A live jazz trio played in the corner, and servers moved through the crowd offering truffle sliders and tiny flutes of pear-infused champagne. Everything was curated, elegant, tasteful, soulless. This wasn't a retirement party. It was a spectacle. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, smiling politely, nodding at people who barely remembered my name. Most were my father's old colleagues or Tamara's charity friends from her Women Who Influenced network. None of them saw me as more than Gregory Monroe's distant daughter. That's what I'd become in this narrative Tamara had constructed over the years, an afterthought. Across the room, I spotted Caleb holding court near the bar. Laughing with a few of Dad's former associates. His sleeves were rolled up just enough to show the Rolex I was almost certain he hadn't paid for. I didn't need to get closer to know what the conversation was about, Caleb's big leap into development. A company with his name on the website but my father's name on every dollar behind it. Not 10 feet from him stood Sienna, surrounded by a group of women oohing over her ring. The thing was massive. Obnoxious. We're having the wedding in Santorini, she was saying. Flipping her perfectly waved hair over one shoulder. Daddy said we should go all out, once in a lifetime and all that. Someone asked about the cost. Sienna giggled. Oh. We don't talk about numbers in front of the peasants, she said, then added, kidding. Kind of. The group laughed. I didn't. I stood by the champagne fountain, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to grab my coat and vanish into the Austin night like I never existed. But instead, I took another sip, slow and steady. And turned my attention to the stage where Tamara was stepping up to the mic. She tapped it gently, the crowd quieted, and then came that carefully composed smile. The one she used for press releases and holiday newsletters. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here to honor my incredible husband, Gregory Monroe, a man whose dedication, brilliance, And generosity have shaped so many lives, especially our family. There it was again. Our family. She continued, her voice saccharine and perfectly paced. I only half listened to the speech. It was full of buzzwords: legacy, mentorship, vision, loyalty. Not one mention of me. Instead, Tamara went on to list Caleb's entrepreneurial drive, Sienna's elegance and ambition. And even referenced their upcoming wedding with a joke about Greek wine. People chuckled. Gregory beamed. I wasn't surprised. But I wasn't angry either. Not anymore. Because in that moment, it hit me with crystalline clarity: they had written me out of their story. Quietly. Efficiently. Deliberately. And for years, I'd let them. I glanced to the side and met Aunt Myra's eyes. She was standing near a floral arch, arms crossed, her gaze locked on Tamara like she was reading through her act. When our eyes met, she gave me the smallest nod. Not pity. Not concern. Permission. I straightened. I wasn't here to beg for recognition. I wasn't here to smile and nod and let them erase me in real time. I was here to be seen. Tamara wrapped up her speech with a kiss to my father's cheek. He took the mic next, raising his glass and thanking the crowd for standing by him, supporting his family. And watching his children grow. A pause. A long pause. Then he continued, Caleb and Sienna make me proud every day. No mention of me. Not even a glance in my direction. The crowd clapped. Someone whistled. I smiled, set down my glass, and smoothed the crease in my blouse. I could feel the pulse of the room returning to casual chatter, wine, and charcuterie. But I was already moving. Because if Gregory Monroe thought this night was about his legacy, he was about to learn how legacy actually works. It remembers the truth. And the truth was about to take the microphone. I moved slowly, deliberately, like a woman with all the time in the world, because I knew that every step I took across that ballroom chipped away at their control. Gregory noticed me first. He was still at the front of the room, shaking hands, basking in the applause. When his eyes landed on mine, the smile faltered, just for a second, before he replaced it with that tight, formal expression he always used when he didn't know how to feel. Or didn't want to. Delilah, he said flatly, glass in hand. Didn't think you'd come. I know, I replied evenly, matching his tone with a smile that didn't touch my eyes. I almost didn't. He gave a short chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes either. You been busy? I nodded. Yeah. Bought my 4th property last quarter. Commercial strip in South Lamar. Fully leased. His brow lifted slightly, but he said nothing. That was the thing about Gregory Monroe, he didn't know what to do with me once I stopped needing him. My independence wasn't a source of pride for him, it was a disruption. I didn't fit the story he wanted to tell, about the father who lifted all his children to greatness. Because I'd done it without him. Before he could reply, Tamara appeared beside him like a shadow wrapped in burgundy silk. Delilah, she trilled, her smile sharp enough to cut granite. You look so professional tonight. Finally figured out how to dress for an event? I tilted my head. I suppose 4 real estate closings in a week will do that to a girl. She laughed a little too loud and touched Gregory's arm like she needed to re-anchor him. Well, isn't that something, she said, then leaned in a fraction too close. At least you're doing something responsible for once. There it was. The jab beneath the compliment. The weaponized condescension. Old habits die hard. I sipped my champagne. And I see you're still thriving in passive aggression. Gregory cleared his throat, shifting. Let's not start anything tonight. I looked at him. Why not? I already got my assigned role. Tamara's lips parted. Excuse me? The name tag, I said lightly. Very creative. The regret? Really? Little on the nose, Tamara, even for you. She blinked. Just for a moment. The veneer cracked. Oh come on, she finally said with a forced laugh. You always take things so personally. It was a joke. Right, I replied. A joke. Like when you joked that I should get a real job. Or when you laughed about how my mother must have rubbed off on me every time I said no to your little brunches. So much humor in this family. You're being dramatic, she said sharply, smile slipping. I'm being honest. Gregory's jaw clenched. Delilah, this is my retirement party. Could we not do this here? And just like that. I saw it again, the same old pattern. I was the problem. Not the insult. Not the erasure. Not the years of being pushed aside. Me. The child who refused to conform. The adult who refused to disappear. I smiled again, this time brighter. Oh, don't worry, Dad. I'm not here to start anything. I took another sip, slow and purposeful. I'm here to finish it. Tamara's expression changed. Her smirk faded, her hand still resting on Gregory's sleeve like she was trying to physically keep him from sliding into discomfort. I just have one question, I said, my voice calm. Was it you? Did you write it? The air felt tighter suddenly, like the chandeliers were holding their breath. Tamara looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're being paranoid." It was probably one of the staff, maybe a prank. I turned to Gregory. Did you know? He hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. No one stopped it, I murmured. Not even when they saw it. I didn't see it, he said quickly, but even he didn't sound convinced. Tamara gave a little shrug. Well, either way, it clearly struck a nerve. I set my champagne glass down on the nearest tray. It did. But not for the reason you think. Then I turned slightly, eyes sweeping the room, at the gold-draped tables, the curated guests, the shallow toasts and shallow smiles. You wanted a show? I said softly. I'm about to give you one. I stepped away from Tamara and Gregory before either of them could say another word. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. From clarity. There's a moment, one you don't forget, when the weight of years finally lifts, not because the pain is gone, but because you decide you won't carry it anymore. I was done carrying their shame. Their expectations, their labels. I passed a waiter and plucked another glass of champagne from the tray. The crystal stem was cool in my fingers, but my grip was steady. As I moved toward the center of the room, I felt the shift. Eyes tracked me. The music softened, then stopped altogether as the trio paused for a short break. Conversations dwindled. A few heads turned. Even before I said a word, the air had already thickened with anticipation. Tamara must have sensed it too. From behind me, I could feel her gaze searing into my back. Like she was trying to will me into silence. But I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I stopped in the middle of the room. Directly beneath the enormous crystal chandelier that Tamara had probably handpicked to impress someone richer than herself. I lifted my champagne glass, tilted just slightly, and gently tapped my ring finger against the rim. Clink. Clink. The sound was delicate, but it echoed like thunder in that glittering silence. Heads turned. Some guests adjusted their posture. Half smiling, assuming I was about to offer a tribute to my father. That I'd finally chosen to fall in line and say something nice. Even Tamara straightened behind me, quickly recovering her mask of grace. I let the silence linger for just a second longer, then smiled. I'd like to make a toast, I said simply. There were scattered murmurs of interest. A few people lifted their own glasses, ready to humor the daughter they barely remembered existed. Gregory stood frozen near the head table, his jaw tight. Tamara wore her most practiced expression, chin slightly raised, mouth twitching into a diplomatic half-smile, like she was already preparing to rewrite whatever I said. They had no idea. I raised my glass a little higher. To Gregory Monroe, I said. My father. The man of the hour. He nodded stiffly, offering a shallow smile. The guests clapped politely. And to Tamara. I continued, turning just enough so she could see the angle of my face, for putting together such an unforgettable evening. Her smile twitched again, just barely. I've been thinking a lot about legacy tonight, I said, my voice calm, steady. What we leave behind. What we pass on. What defines us when we're gone. The room was quiet now. Attentive. I took a slow sip, then continued. My father always said that family was everything. That loyalty is the most important thing a person can give. That true character is shown in how you treat your own. Gregory shifted, setting his glass down. I used to believe that, I said, softer now. I believed in the stories he told me growing up. I believed I was part of something that mattered. Tamara tilted her head slightly, like she was trying to guess where I was going. I didn't give her the chance. But over the years, I realized something, I went on. Sometimes, what we call family is just a mirror, one that only reflects back what we want to see. I saw Aunt Myra from the corner of my eye, her arms crossed. A look of recognition dawning on her face. Some of us get cast as the golden child, I said. Some as the disappointment. Or, if you're really creative, asterisk the regret. I paused, letting the words land. There were audible gasps. A few people glanced at one another. Tamara's mouth opened slightly, and her face froze. I smiled again, gentle and unshaken. But here's the thing about mirrors, I said, turning my eyes directly on Tamara. They crack. Eventually. And when they do, the truth leaks out. Someone near the back whispered. Wait, what did she say? I didn't stop. I couldn't. Tonight, I walked into a party that was never meant to include me. I found a name tag that told me exactly how you see me. But I'm not ashamed of that. I lifted my glass one last time. I'm proud to be the one thing you never expected, independent, successful, and no longer under your control. My voice didn't rise. I didn't scream. But somehow, it echoed louder than if I had. I let the silence bloom again before finishing. To the last time you'll ever see me in this room. And just like that. I lowered the glass, turned around. And walked away. The silence that followed was like a vacuum. For a moment, no one moved. Then came the ripple, quiet gasps, the awkward shuffling of heels on tile. A champagne flute slipping from someone's fingers in the back, hitting the floor with a soft plink. But no one looked. All eyes were on me. Gregory's face had gone pale. Jaw clenched so hard I could see the vein in his temple pulsing. Tamara? She looked like someone had slapped her in public, which, in a way, I had. I didn't stop walking. My heels clicked confidently across the floor as I set my half-full champagne glass down on a nearby table with deliberate grace. I didn't rush. I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't running away from anything. I was walking out of a cage. Delilah. Gregory's voice snapped behind me, sharp and commanding, a reflex. I turned slightly. Just enough to meet his eyes. Yes? This is not the time, he said, his voice straining with the effort to stay composed, aware that half the room was still watching. It's not? I replied calmly. Because it feels exactly like the time. The perfect moment, actually. His lips parted like he wanted to say more, but no words came. Just silence. Tamara stepped forward then. All fire and fury behind her perfectly sculpted smile. You are unbelievable, she hissed, voice low but venomous. Do you have any idea how selfish you just made yourself look? I raised an eyebrow. Selfish? For speaking after being publicly labeled a regret? For finally saying the things you all whispered behind closed doors? If anything, I think I was generous. She blinked. You should be thanking me, I added with a soft laugh. I gave your party a moment no one will forget. Her face flushed red, but she didn't speak. From behind them, I heard someone murmur. Wait, was that real? Another voice, she said name tag. What did it say? Whispers multiplying like sparks on dry leaves. The carefully crafted image Tamara had spent years building, perfect wife. Perfect family, perfect legacy, was crumbling in real time. Gregory opened his mouth again, but Aunt Myra beat him to it. She's not wrong, Myra said clearly, stepping forward. The whole room turned. You all made it easy to forget she existed. Until now. Tamara's head whipped toward her. Oh, don't start, Myra. I've always watched, Myra interrupted coldly. And I've seen more than either of you would like. Gregory looked at his sister like she'd just betrayed him in front of the Supreme Court. Myra. No, she cut him off. You don't get to play wounded now, Gregory. You had every chance to be her father. You chose performance over parenthood. He flinched. Literally took a half step back. Tamara was now trying to control the room, waving her hands with an air of theatricality. This isn't what tonight is about. Let's all just take a breath and what? I asked sharply. Finally turning to face them fully. Go back to pretending? Tamara inhaled through her nose like she was physically restraining herself from saying something worse. But I wasn't finished. Pretending that Caleb earned everything he has? I continued, voice louder now. Pretending that Sienna's wedding was funded by some fairy tale magic, not my father's retirement account? Pretending that I wasn't quietly erased from every speech, every photo, every holiday card for the past 10 years? The guests were no longer pretending not to listen. Some looked uncomfortable. Others stunned. A few, like Aunt Myra, looked like they'd been waiting for this moment as long as I had. And Tamara, her face had hardened into something unfamiliar. No more faux charm. No more smiles. Just fear. And fury. Gregory looked old suddenly, like someone had peeled back the years of power and reputation and found a tired man who realized he'd lost something he couldn't get back. I shook my head. I spent years thinking that if I just worked harder, smiled more, swallowed every insult, you'd finally see me differently. But the truth is, you saw me exactly how you wanted to. As a threat. As a stain on your perfect family portrait. I took one last glance around the room, eyes locking with a few stunned guests. And if telling the truth makes me a disappointment, I paused, then smiled. Then I'm proud to be your greatest one yet. With that, I turned and walked away. This time, no one dared to stop me. The heavy glass doors of the ballroom clicked shut behind me, muffling the chaos inside. Outside, the air was crisp with early spring chill. The sharp contrast to the humid tension I had just left behind felt like a rebirth, cold, honest, and unfiltered. I stood still for a moment at the top of the stairs. The city lights of Austin glittered in the distance, and the faint hum of traffic grounded me back into reality. There was no applause behind me. No one chasing after me. No father shouting my name this time. Just silence. And for once, it felt like freedom. I took off the name tag Tamara had so thoughtfully created and stared at it for a moment. Delilah Monroe, the regret. The words no longer stung. They felt pathetic now. Desperate. Like a last-ditch attempt from someone who knew she had lost control. I folded the tag in half. Then again. And again. Until it was nothing but a sharp-edged square I tucked into my purse, like a souvenir of the war I had just ended. A few seconds later, the doors behind me opened gently. It wasn't Gregory. Or Tamara. Or even Caleb or Sienna. It was Aunt Myra. She didn't speak right away, just came to stand beside me, her heels clicking softly against the stone. After a pause, she exhaled a quiet breath. That was one hell of a monologue. I let out a small laugh. I didn't plan it. You didn't have to, she said. It's been writing itself for decades. I turned to her. My voice quieter. Was I wrong, Myra? Did I go too far? She looked at me for a long time. No. You didn't go far enough. But I think you went just far enough for you. That almost broke me. Because for so long, I'd tailored my actions for them, to be tolerable, to be accepted, to not make anyone uncomfortable. And here, for the first time, someone was reminding me that this moment wasn't about their comfort. It was about my liberation. I don't think they'll ever forgive me, I murmured. Myra tilted her head. You really think they ever intended to? That hit deeper than I expected. No, I admitted. She smiled. Exactly. So what they think of you now doesn't matter, Delilah. The only thing that matters is what you do from here. We stood there a moment longer before she squeezed my arm gently and said, I'll call you tomorrow. Then she turned and disappeared into the night, heels clicking into the parking garage like punctuation marks on a finished sentence. I walked down the steps alone, my steps slow but sure. My phone buzzed once, then again. I didn't check it. I already knew what it would say. Gregory, call me. Now. Tamara, unbelievable. Hope you're proud of yourself. Sienna, WTF, Delilah? Caleb. No words, just an emoji, a clown face. I slid the phone into my pocket without unlocking it. They didn't get to occupy my mind anymore. By the time I got to my car, the adrenaline had started to wear off, replaced by something quieter. Something deeper. Not triumph, exactly. Not even relief. It was stillness. The kind that comes when you finally stop twisting yourself into someone else's mold. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, just breathing. No music. No tears. Just the soft hum of the engine as I pulled out of the garage and into the city's warm orange glow. Every mile I put between myself and that ballroom felt like shedding an old skin. That night, I went home to my condo, a space I had bought myself, decorated myself, built without their approval. I poured a glass of wine, kicked off my shoes, and opened the balcony doors to the stars. I didn't check my phone again. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for an apology. I had said what needed to be said. And that was more than enough. The days that followed were strangely quiet. Not in the literal sense, my phone didn't stop buzzing for nearly 72 hours, but in the way that mattered, everything had gone still. It felt like the chaos was spinning just outside a wall I'd finally built high enough to keep it out. I didn't answer the calls. Not the first day, not the second, and definitely not the third. Tamara sent long-winded texts dripping with fake concern and thinly veiled threats. I think we need to have a mature conversation. There were donors there, Delilah. This could affect your father's reputation. Like I hadn't just spent 3 decades being collateral damage in their quest for perfection. Gregory was less theatrical. Just a short message. Call me. We need to talk. And then, when I didn't respond. This isn't how family works. You don't just walk out. But here's the thing no one teaches you about walking away. You can. And sometimes, you must. I never replied. Instead, I poured all my energy into my next project, a multi-unit affordable housing renovation on the east side of town. I hired single moms as contractors. I reached out to local shelters for women escaping domestic violence to offer subsidized rent. I poured my soul into something real. Something mine. One afternoon, about a week after the party, I was sitting at a small cafe downtown reviewing blueprint revisions when my phone lit up with a call from Aunt Myra. I picked up instantly. Hey, I said. You breathing? Barely, I admitted. Half laughing. But yeah. There was a long pause on her end. Then, you broke something open, Delilah. I hope you know that. Yeah, but did I break it beyond repair? Was it ever whole to begin with? That silence between us was an answer in itself. Myra told me she'd stopped by Gregory's house 2 days earlier. Tamara refused to come out of the upstairs room. Sienna was apparently too upset to speak, and Gregory just kept pacing the den with a glass of scotch and a 1,000-yard stare. But, she added, not one of them said they were sorry. I nodded. Not surprised. They don't regret what they did. They regret that I finally said it out loud. Exactly, she said. We talked a bit longer. Mostly about the housing project and a local art exhibit I wanted to visit. Before we hung up, she said, I'm proud of you, you know. It caught me off guard. For what? For telling your story. And finally stepping out of theirs. After that call, I sat quietly, staring out at the street. Couples walking dogs. A man on a bike laughing into his phone. Normal life, moving forward. I realized I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel like a villain. I felt clean. Like I'd finally scrubbed off years of invisible ink they'd been writing all over me. The family group chat? Still active. Though I had it on mute. From what Myra told me, there were now debates happening over who let it get this far. Sienna apparently blamed Tamara. Tamara blamed me. Caleb stayed silent, he always did when he wasn't the center of attention. I archived the thread. And that was that. 1 week later, I stood in my new building's common room. Watching the first family move into one of the freshly painted units. A single mom named Rosa and her 2 daughters. The youngest waved to me from the doorway with a grin missing 2 front teeth. She reminded me of myself at that age, hopeful, kind, still unscarred. That's when I knew I'd done the right thing. Not just because I spoke up. Not just because I walked out. But because I'd finally stepped into a life that was entirely mine. I no longer lived in the margins of someone else's narrative. I was writing my own. And I had no regrets. Not anymore. Have you ever had to walk away from people who refused to respect your boundaries, even if they were family? Tell us in the comments. Speaking head, what moment in this story hit you the hardest? Fire, have you ever been labeled something that didn't define you? Speech balloon, let's talk about the moment you finally said, enough.